I am living for your guys' aesthetics. Like goodness, like I'm no longer seeing that old ass tapestry you got behind your
my
head.
God. No, I know, right? Like I've had that tapestry since like probably 2012. It's been like literally hanging up in my room, and I'm so over it. I mean, like it's cute, I like it, but it's just not the vibe anymore.
But that, and then for Michelle, I'm living for this. What is this purple going on? Like,
yes. Oh my God,
I got just my bangs are purple.
Everyone's in purple.
Oh my gosh!
Red.
No, but red and blue together make purple. So
okay, so
oh my gosh, it's so like symbolic actually because you okay. So like imagine purple is actually no, it would be.
We can imagine it. We can imagine it.
So you are both an ENFP, but also do not have ADHD. So purple is representing ADHD, but because you're so NE, you had to have both the colors in your background.
We had to connect the dots. We really have to connect the dots.
I almost feel like ADHD is like super acceptable socially. I don't know if I'm biased because I just think it's cool, or like I feel like I know a lot of people that do. Like I would not judge someone on a friend or like romantic partner basis at all. But I feel like in the workplace, I wouldn't judge someone who has ADHD, but as someone who might have it, I definitely wouldn't want to like tell a potential employer or even my employer if I am struggling in a certain area. I would never want it to come off as though this is an excuse. And I also wouldn't want it to come off as like, I'm just not capable of doing the things that you want me to do.
I can definitely see why there would be a fear there of like expressing the fact that you do have ADHD, because in the workplace, knowing that someone has ADHD is a potential risk for the employer, right? And employers don't like to know, I mean, they like to know risks so then they can avoid risks, and it's a potential cause for discrimination, even though legally, they can't discriminate against you for having ADD, but what they can do is say this other applicant was more well suited to the role, and kind of work around that discrimination. Anyway, hello and welcome you guys to my channel. Thank you so much for being on here. We have Nate Rasa from, oh my gosh, I just can't even with myself right now. It's a great podcast. Yeah. You guys should check it out. Yeah. It's just like such a, like it just rolls off your tongue. Like I just can't even with myself right now. It's so perfect. I love the name.
Yes. And I like when you say, I don't know if this is in just the beginning of your intro, but you go NE Unleashed. And I'm like,
yes. And then,
by the way, Michelle, you're like the first person to just literally just say it like right the very first time.
I just can't even with myself right now because I love the name. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is so perfect. I love it.
It encompasses literally how I go about my entire life. Like that's literally my narrative.
I see
something I don't like. I'm like, can't even. You're like, can't even with that one either. Nope. To the point where my friends mess around with it too. They're like, oh, you will even. And I'm like, no, I can't. Just to mess around.
Yes. That's amazing. And then of course we have the infamous Meghan LeVota, one of the OG MBTI YouTubers. The matron saint of MBTI YouTube.
Oh wow! See, since I'm wearing purple, you are too. It's like the royal sort of color.
Exactly, the royalty.
God, love that intro. So happy to be here.
We guys, we have a really exciting video today because the three of us are going to discuss a topic that people just seem to have a weird concept around this, and I see why it exists. I definitely do, especially since a lot of people with NE and SE get diagnosed as ADHD, whether or not they have it, that it can be a little bit like, oh, you have ADHD, you're NE or SE. Kind of like with the 7s in Enneagram, we kind of like equate these with certain cognitive functions, but we're here today to talk about how that is incorrect. So we have Nate, who is an ENFP and does not have ADHD. And then we have Meghan, who's an ENFJ, who believes that she does have ADHD and has been researching that a lot lately.
Yes.
So
I'm not like officially diagnosed, but like, tell me if this sounds ADHD or not, is that I literally like try and look up therapists near me. And then I like talked to someone and I was going to set it up. And then like, they told me to read their documents about their insurance. And I was like, oh, I'm going to bookmark this. I don't look at my bookmarks.
Oh no. Oh no.
How many bookmarks do you have that you have never looked at?
I just got a new laptop actually, and I was like looking through my bookmarks and I realized that I had like recipes from like 2016 still bookmarked and like books that I was going to read. And then I was like, you know what? I should make like a book list or something, or a recipe list. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I do something similar actually. I will start to read something because I've gone down some kind of rabbit hole. And I'm like, I don't want to forget this link exists. Because what I end up having is like 20 open tabs. And I'm like, I need to do something about this, but I can't close the tab because I'm afraid to lose this link forever. So I save the link and then, I never come back because I never think to go through my bookmarks. Like who goes through their bookmarks?
I know. And actually, that's probably one of the main reasons I started bookmarking is because I needed to get rid of tabs.
I've reframed it as a 7. That for me, if I didn't check it, it's because it wasn't that important anyway. So I just moved on from it. I mean, if it was really that important, I feel like it'll hit me, it'll bite me in the ass somewhere.
Right.
That actually reminds me of the phrase of when people are like, well, if it's important, you'll remember. But that's not true for me. I don't know if that's true for you, Michelle.
It is, well, here's like, I have had to create a kind of system because I get a lot of really like great ideas. And I'm like, this is the greatest idea of all time. And I don't have pen or paper or my phone nearby to like write it down, or I have a voice memo and I like record the voice memo and I never go back to the voice memo. So
interesting.
I have a rule of like ruling out ideas that I have, like if I don't remember them, then they really weren't that great anyway, because if something is really impactful, it sticks with me and they're the kind of ideas that I can't forget. But then also I do try to take some time to like go through old recordings, even though it's really tedious and annoying and I don't like doing it. Sometimes I'll do that because I do find the occasional good one, but I don't like listening as much as I like looking through visually. So I do prefer like to look through ideas. Like I have a bullet journal, which I use a lot. And I use that for recording all my ideas down for like videos and stuff. And I'll go through it, especially if I'm like, I don't know what kind of video to make right now. So I'll like go through my list of ideas. And I'm like, do any of these seem like a good idea? And I'm like, Michelle, what were you thinking? You're never going to make that video.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I have a bullet journal too. And the funny thing is that sometimes I'll look at my old notes and I'll be like, what was I thinking? Like I'll write something like FE, FI, different, or like some other random word. And I like in my mind, when I write it down, I'm like, oh my God, I just made this intense connection between FE and FI. And then like, I look at my notes and I'm like, what was I talking about?
Not enough information at all.
Exactly.
But say that you guys are on point being the ones that like, I don't journal, like period. That's like, I really don't.
What?
I really don't. Like I make tasks, I make little things to do on my calendar and stuff, but I don't really sit down and journal anything. I don't know, like it's never really been, in the OPS system, I just found that I was play first, which actually explains a lot of how I operate, which again could even lend to the stereotype of, ADHD people, because apparently it was posted on the OPS Facebook group actually, and they're like, how many play firsts are gonna have a field day with this one? And I'm like, oh well, way to roast me. But yeah, like a lot of the times my retention of information actually works better when I'm interacting with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm actually talking to somebody, and either I'm teaching something to them or imparting information to them, is how I actually process the information myself. So I actually require another party to be present at all times, which actually kind of kills me when it comes to studying. So in a way, I don't sit still, but I do need a person there to like bounce off of.
I relate to that way too much.
Do you know where your sleep is? Do you know where your sleep is in your stack?
For Michelle or for me?
Well, for both of you, but I didn't
definitely
know what
last for me.
Mine's last too. Mine's definitely last.
Okay. Because I was going to say mine's third, but I feel like what you're describing might be a sleep last thing too, because I feel like...
Oh yeah, like a combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I do enjoy reflecting, but before I can reflect, I do agree, like, because I'm play second. So I do agree that, like, I would prefer to talk it out, like, before.
Wow, you're probably, like, one of the most extroverted kind of ENFJs, aren't you?
Yeah, probably.
Blast, play, ENFJ. Oh, man.
Well, it's knowing Meghan now, like, being what I've known from like, the year, she's literally like, oh, I have an idea, turns on the camera. So, everybody, I'm going to teach you something today.
Oh, my God, I cannot do that. I cannot do that at all.
And I've gotten out of my groove, like, the past couple months. Which, yeah.
So I guess I want to ask first and foremost, like what, I know you talked to me a little bit about this over Instagram, but what made you start to question and think that maybe you have ADHD?
So it's funny because it's actually Nate that just sent me this random video.
That video.
It was like I think it was from the YouTube channel, How to ADD or something. And the video was like, here's an ADHD test. And I like just took it for fun because I've always thought that I kind of related to it. But like, I recall a time in high school, one of my friends was talking about how he had it. And I remember being like, well, what is it? Like, tell me what it is. And he told me all the traits. And I was like, well, I have that too. Like, how come I don't have it? Well, like the thing that I thought at the time was that in order to have it, it had to be like something that like a teacher or like someone like pulled you aside and told you. I was like, I was in high school at the time. So, and I like went to the same elementary as this guy. And so I was like, wait, why do you have it and I don't have it? And I was like confused. And then like, I didn't really think about it much, but like I've heard people say things like ADHD isn't real. Like it's just creativity and things like that. And like, I never really bought into that because I think it's important to like, understand like mental illness and like personality differences and stuff. Or I don't know, what is it classified as?
I think
mental health or no?
I think it's a mental disorder technically.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess
they didn't call it a learning disability, but it can cause some issues with learning. But it's not a disability from what I understood. Which is kind of nice.
A mental health disorder.
Disorder. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I guess I always sort of had this feeling of like, well, that doesn't sound like a disorder. It just sounds like a difference. And so I think that's why I was like, I'm not sure. But then whenever I've been like looking up things or like actual ADHD experts or like people with ADHD talking about it, it seems like the consensus is that it's not a disability in the sense that like, oh no, like it's this whole thing to overcome. It's just like different than a lot of other people. So you have to make adjustments. Mm-hmm. Is that how you would describe it, Michelle? Or what do you think?
So I grew up in a family where all four of us have ADHD, all of me and my siblings. And my mom even said like she won the lottery because you're supposed to only 1 in 4 children is supposed to have ADHD according to like statistics. And she's like, all 4 of you got it. I got screwed over kind of thing. So like my older 2 siblings had it and I saw a lot of what they went through. And so I consciously made the choice, like, I am not going to let that happen to me. I'm not going to let myself go on medication. I'm going to learn how to deal with it. Like, I'm just going to push through. I was very willful as a child. As a child, like I'm not still super willful. And so like for me, it's always been a struggle, but I have through like having siblings who have it learned coping mechanisms that I've been able to like make my own. And I don't think that it's a disorder or a disability, and I really don't like that it's called attention deficit disorder. First of all, I don't think it's a deficit of attention. I think it's the opposite. I think you have a lot more capacity for attention, and that's why it's harder for you to maintain attention on certain things, as I said in my video the other day. But I think that it is something that can be learned how to harness. And I think, like I was thinking while you were talking, you know, as an ENFJ who is more naturally organized than a lot of other types, I feel like it would be much more manageable as an ENFJ to have ADHD, because you would be better at self-managing yourself naturally. And so like when you have an attention issue, you would just like power through it and force yourself to just work on things anyway, regardless of your like attention issues, is what I would imagine.
That's kind of what I've done. And what I'm struggling with now though, is that my default is, well, whatever you do, don't piss the person off. And like, I've lived so much of my life, like so beholden to the other person and like this external sort of deadline. And so at school, I always wanted to please my teachers, and I went above and beyond to make them like me. And so I think like things like that can definitely help like cope or like make people not notice that I'm struggling. And also I just want to point out too, that what you said about it's not necessarily a deficit of attention, but it's like in how you manage it. That resonates so freaking much with me, because like I always would say like that I only was able to put my attention toward things if I loved doing it. I've always known that I was that way. I never had a word for it or anything. I thought maybe it was connected to me being an ENFJ, and just like, because I was a feeler, like I thought, oh, well, I just have to have that feeling there or else I won't do it. And so I've already been making adjustments to like make my life work for me so that I can use the attention that I do have. Because I've always felt like super worthless at things if I don't like it. Like in school, I poured all of my attention toward like artistic things like choir and theater, and like I never really studied. I kind of just got by in school. So I'm curious, Nate, like how do you feel like you compare to both of what we've just said about like how we're experiencing attention? Since you're a 7 and an ENFP, so like
yeah,
you kind of sound like stereotypical ADD, kind of like you seem like everything is predisposed to have ADD, and yet
it's the most hilarious part. I'm also 7 wing 6, which is the more whimsical compared to the 7 wing 8. So like whenever people go, the manic pixie dream girl stereotype actually would fit me, and I'm actually kind of in a way I do agree with it, but I think I actually don't relate to a lot of the things you guys are talking about, because when it comes to having the attention, like having a capacity for more attention, which I feel is also correct with the ADHD to like better your understanding of it. But for me, I spend the whole day already organizing my day. Like if that makes sense, like I already kind of have, okay, well, I'm going to spend 2 hours on this, and I will put that in there. Or I will be like, oh, because usually since COVID happened and I don't have a job and I've been just working it, like recently I got into school and everything. During that period where nothing was really going on, maybe that was a stereotypical of just, I'm just chilling and I'm relaxing, and, you know, my show kicked in, and that was very wild and free, which I think is the persona I'm projecting. But usually when things were going on in my life, I usually would organize everything. Like everything would just be organized in my day. So like I liked routine in a way. I don't know if that was conditioning having SI down parents, but like I knew that if I woke up a certain time, like I'm a morning person, I always wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. That's never changed ever since I hit adulthood. Like I taught myself to stop moving in bed. Like that was the thing. When people tell me, they're like, oh, I move a lot. I'm like, well, and the thing is I'm not a doctor, so I can't really diagnose a person. But I just said to them my experience, which was I laid a laptop next to me and I said, tonight you're not moving. Like tonight, this is going to stay there and you're not going to move. And I just like went to bed, closed my eyes. I'm like, we're not moving today. This is not how it's going to go. And I woke up, laptop's still there. I did the same thing with the ukulele at my feet. And I was like, woo, getting a little edgy here with my guitar next to the edge of the bed. But things like that. Like I
The
tell my
sheets are
body.
always off the bed when I wake up.
Oh. Pillows is a different story, but I guess because I put so much value to the object that's in question, like a laptop's an expensive thing and I cannot afford to replace it. So my body's like, you are going to listen to me. Like it was very imposed. And I mean, I don't know if that's so much connected to my Enneagram because I'm also a self-pres Dom. So they mentioned that self-pres Dom, 7-pres, Lord have mercy. 3 Dom 7s are, especially with the wing 6, we're more careful, strategic. We like to put a lot of thought into a lot of things we do. And it's not something I show to people. Usually when the doors are closed, I actually am pretty, I don't know, like it's, some of my folks might, even in my friend group, they think of me as an introvert, a thinker, which doesn't make any sense.
Like you have like a greater grasp and connection to your ISTJ side in a way is kind of what it sounds
in a way. I don't know if that's so much as SI abuse, trauma, and how I've dealt with it.
Do you feel like having SI parents has made you realize from kind of an early age that if you did these like few SI things that you would have more room for your NE to like do what you want?
The funny thing is I grew up angry. Like that was my teenage years. I was not happy with how I was being raised. Look at that, right? I was a 7. I tried to move out like 3 times as a kid. One when I was like 6 years old. Like it was a thing. But because I didn't have stranger danger issues. I was the person that like I was shameless a lot of the times, and it was a lot of really like being against what people are teaching me, let's say. But growing up and you hit the adulthood, I realized, well, if my parents can't parent me, I should be able to parent me. That was the mentality. So I'm going to be my own parent and I'm going to hold myself responsible. I'm going to hold myself accountable. Like that, those are the mentality that kicked in with me. It literally hit 19 and it happened. So there we go.
Wow. That's so crazy because like, I also really like to plan things out. Like I really do, but I am so bad at like following through with them because when things come up in the moment, like I get very easily sidetracked by them. And I'm like, oh, I need to deal with this and I need to figure out how to solve this right this second. And like that prioritization of like where to put my energy can be very difficult to maintain, especially if there's a lot of new things coming at me where like I don't have the time to think about what to prioritize. I just have to deal with it. Like, for example, at my work right now, because of all these like all of COVID has made things like crazy at my work. We're already work at home, but there's a lot of people who work for the same company that were in brick and mortar. So we had to transition a bunch of people to work at home from these brick and mortar locations, which caused a bunch of security concerns, which caused like all of our programs to have to change. Like we stopped using a lot of the programs that we were using and we had to switch to new programs. They weren't working right. And then on top of that, like right now is our ramp season. And what that means is like we're ramping up to a lot heavier head count of how many people are working for us. And they, more so than any other year, have been changing the plan almost every week of how many people we're going to have and when we're going to have them and how we're going to manage it. And like, it's been making it to where like my ADHD is a little bit worse and harder to manage than normal. Because of all these changes, I'm having to like constantly adapt and like change my plans, and people are coming at me from all different directions because we don't have a consistent tool anymore for communication. So people are texting me, they're emailing me, they're messaging me on one system, they're messaging me on another system, and I'm getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And obviously, like, I want to be able to help everyone and like do my job. But I'm also like letting myself much more easily get distracted and overwhelmed by these things, more so than I normally would. And it's actually been really frustrating because like when you have, like, at least for me, like I've been really good at managing my ADHD, and these last few months have been making me kind of feel like a failure because I can't, and I've been really scattered, and I've been letting a lot of people down because like I make these plans and then things change and I forget to change the plans with this new information because I'm dealing with the new information rather than like fixing these other plans. And then a bunch of things are falling through, and it's like causing a lot of like frustration and anxiety actually. With everything that's been going on at my work.
It's such bad timing.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
All on your lap. What the heck? That is insane.
Yeah. It's been frustrating.
I feel like as far as priorities go, I feel like I'm pretty good at prioritizing like in a higher level way. But whenever it comes to my day-to-day life of like making sure that I get those tasks done, that's where it could be like difficult for me, where I've read that time blindedness is like a big thing for like ADHD, where like you have trouble knowing how long things are going to take. So my whole thing, and this is kind of related to being an Enneagram 2 and an FE Dom, but my whole thing is that I always overgive and then like underperform, because like whenever I am like super excited about something, I actually do get things done like very, very quickly. But whenever I'm not, sometimes it just depends on my mood. I feel like I have no control over my mood. And that's why I've been putting so much energy into wanting to work for myself, because I know that like the amount of energy it takes for me to make like one YouTube video or something, like really is not that much energy, especially I don't want to say necessarily compared to most people, but like people have told me like, wow, how did you make so much content? I'm like, oh, I was just doing that. But then like for me to like do something for work or something that I'm not super jazzed about, like I feel like it takes me like way longer than most people. And like to the outsider looking in, that can just make it seem like I'm not prioritizing them, or like that I don't care about them or something. And it's like, I know when people talk about ADHD, they talk about how you are hyper focused and on like certain things. And I really relate to that. But it almost feels like I'm living life with no control over what I'm hyper focused on and what I'm not. And like, I would love to arrange my life to be like hyper focusing, like maybe 4 to 5 hours a day. And then that's it. Cause also like, I don't know if you relate to this, Michelle, but when I am hyper focused and I am like very, very productive and get a lot done, I'm very exhausted afterwards.
Right.
And
Dang.
I feel like I'm really great. Like I really enjoy like the Pomodoro technique. Like even like for at work, like I just am like, I'm doing nothing but this. And then I like do it a lot. And like, even at work sometimes, like if I can trick myself into caring that day, like I feel like I will hear things like, wow, like that was so fast and like so efficient and like so creative. And like, I hear a lot of like positive, like reinforcement based on my ability. But then I make a lot of stupid mistakes too. Like I'll just like forget to double check something and like tweet out a typo or like things like that, where it's like clear that I'm not like super paying attention to something. Or I actually was fired from a job in college I was like working as a cashier, and I'm pretty sure my boss was an ISTJ. And it would be things like, why didn't you put the stapler back where it belonged? And I was like, well, I don't know where it belongs. And he was like, you've worked here for so long and you don't know where it belongs. And I was like, well, it was on the table. And so I just kept it on the table. Like, I didn't know like where it went or something. And like, then it's like, oh, I come off as though I'm being defensive or something, when like, I actually am just curious. And then like another thing that I did too is like, he gave me like an email list of like a list of people that wanted to be signed up on our email. And I had typed them all in manually, and quite a few of them went back as email not found because of typos, even though I tried my best to double check. Like I really did think. And so the thing is that when I do things like that, it can make people think like, oh my God, why didn't you double check? And like, for me, I feel like it's like, I have my eyes like staring and I'm like trying to do it. And I feel like, especially as an ENFJ, it can make me come off as though I'm like a diva, or I'm like, well, I just only want to do these things that I'm good at. And I'm not trying to be that. Like, I would love to do the things that I'm not good at. And I've also said too, like I've complained, so I'm kind of on a roll now, but like, my mom's an ESFJ, and there's been times when, like a couple summers ago, I was working at a coffee shop while also doing coaching and YouTube stuff. And my mom and I was like complaining about how hard it was or something. And my mom said something like, well, you chose this. You could have chosen a simpler job like what I do, which is like doing insurance or something. And I was like, that sounds hard. Like what I'm doing is easy. And she was like, no, it's so hard for you to put yourself out there on the internet and make all that content. I'm like, no, that's easy, Mom. Like I would take an insurance job or something and get paid more like at this point. Like I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm really not like, so that's kind of where it comes in for me is that I think it could look like I'm being difficult or taking risks when I'm trying to find coping mechanisms. So
I relate a lot to the hyperfocus aspect, like a lot, because that's one of the main symptoms I have as well, where like I have this like thing where I have a delayed response a lot of times because people will say something and I'll have a thought about what they say. And then a few seconds later, I'll register that they said something new and I'll be like, I'll respond to that. And they're like, I said that like X amount of time ago. Like, why are you just now responding to it? Oh, it can be the source of a lot of miscommunication or frustration from the other party's end because they're like, aren't you paying attention to me? And I'm like, yes, I am. But I also have thoughts going on in my head. Like, how can I like manage this? Nate's over there like,
it's interesting because like to you guys, it seems like you can't help it, right? Like it really does take over a lot of your life. Because for me to ignore, let's say, a text message and not reply to the correct one, that's a conscious choice by me. So to my friends watching, they're like, yes, I actually did purposely ignore. That was my intention, is I also did not want to answer it.
Yeah, that's not true for me.
So it is, yeah, like I guess for me, I get burned a lot for it because, one, I don't have ADHD, so I can't really just say, oh, I have this, therefore. No, I really don't. So when things do happen, I'm like, yeah, I did actually ignore it because I didn't want to answer it at the time. I had something else going on.
Well, that seems like you were in charge of your attention in that minute. Like you thought something else was more worthy of your attention. And
yeah, it's funny you guys talked about, there's that thing you mentioned, Megan, about, or was it you or was it Michelle earlier about, being in a lot of high stimulus environment and then feeling exhausted afterwards. I don't feel exhausted. That's the thing with me. For me, that's what I want. I want the high everything. There's situations like high pressure that I think, I don't know, like maybe it's because I'm a 7, like because I have a lot of energy, but there's like a time where I was handling tech for this building at the time, for like media and video for this one meeting, and things started going, crazy because there seems to be somebody wasn't really prepared and something went wrong. And then I was surrounded by folks and they were offering me these like, oh, this is the picture we need, or this, everyone's pointing fingers. And like the minute I could feel myself with the pressure rising of like, oh my goodness, I'm going to disappoint everybody. And then I just thought to myself, okay, this is my hand putting that down. And I was like, pushed all of that down, put away, threw all the voices away. And I'm like, I looked to them, I'm like, I got this. I was like, if I fail, I fail. At that point, I was like, if it falls, then it burns. But I'm going to try really hard to make it succeed. So if you like the result, that's great. If you don't, too bad. I'm going to give you the disclaimer now. And then, because I just needed to remove the excess voices, because none of those voices were important to me. They weren't important to the project. They weren't going to give me a success, and they weren't going to give anyone success. But, people are, they have fears, they got things, and I took that into consideration, but to me, it wasn't important enough. So I'm like, you gave me the task to fulfill it, so I will do it. That was kind of my
do you ever feel yourself caught in like, not giving attention to the things that are more important?
What do you mean? Like in terms, like if I'm conscious of that, I'm not giving it attention, you mean?
I guess like for me, it's very often I find myself like investing energy or attention in something that I consciously know is not important. I didn't know if that happens for you, if that's something.
I would say yes. But that's because I made the choice to do so. That I'm going to read this because I had time to read this or I was going to do this today. I would tell, like, for example, I would tell a friend, like, over text, I'm like, sorry guys, I'm currently doing something right now. And that's just how it's going to be. And, I'll get back to what it is. Like, if you have anything you want from me, please send me a text message. I'll reply back in an hour. And like, I will try really hard to at least make it by the hour and be like, hey, I'm here. I think an example of how I managed a lot of my time was with my friend's wedding. I was the best man for her and his wedding, sorry. I couldn't be a maid of honor, so apologies, I guess, to that. But for that moment, during the planning process, I was like, hey guys, so I know you guys are planning something, and for the sake of context, she's an ESFJ, he's an ESTP. Neither of them have TE. Right. So I was like, I have the spreadsheet, I have the Google Sheets, I'm going to sync up everybody's pages, I'm going to do all of these things. And during the actual wedding day, I was like, okay, well, I'm driving. They gave me the task of I'm driving the bride, I'm handling the tech for the people in the thing, and I'm making sure they're fed. I had a care package ready. Like, it was just, and that was fun to me. Like, the only regret I had was I didn't get a drop of the wine that they had bought. Because like, even my cousin got to drink vodka, and I was kind of like upset about that. Like, how did you get to drink? You did nothing at that wedding. I'm like, I was the one, like, I needed the alcohol. But anyways, I don't know, like, afterwards, even the day after, like 2 days afterwards, I had to drive some of the equipment back to where they rented it, like, by myself, and it was fine. Like, I loved the thrill that came with the task or the responsibility. So that's why it's kind of funny to...
It just, to me, it sounds like you have a lot of conscious control over where you spend your energy, and like where you spend your attention, and like doing things that are boring aren't difficult for you to do because you need to get them done, and they're just like another task in order to get to the ultimate goal, and you can just power through them and get through them and do them. Is that an appropriate?
Yeah, because I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Power of Habit. I don't know the author, but if you guys know it, sound off below. No, it's just,
what?
So it was like 27 days before it finally kicks in or something like that. But there is a particular quote in there that said that humans are naturally routine, consistent, comfortable-oriented creatures. Our brains are lazy by default. Right. So that kind of helped me in a way manage like my expectations on a lot of things in life, because by doing so, like, for example, like washing dishes, I actually enjoy it a lot.
I like washing dishes.
Cleaning, like all that delicious things. Because, well, one, my mom raised me to do everything with music. So she tricked me, conditioning from my own mother. She was like, oh, well, today we're going to vacuum, but first we're going to pump up some 70s disco and see what happens. So, things like that kick in. And so now I'm conditioned where the minute music starts to happen, my body will start, like, will get up, and instead of dancing, which I still do, I would start organizing things in my room, like, just naturally. Like, I would just start getting up. And to me, it doesn't cause any kind of excess energy loss because my brain's made those connections already.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have an extreme energy loss necessarily, but for me, what the problem is like, even if I am interested in doing something, sometimes it's really hard to make myself focus on it and to like make myself do the work to do it. So like, for example, it could be editing a video. I could be super excited about the video. I could be really excited about editing it. But for whatever reason, like when I try to sit down and do it, like I do 2 minutes and I'm like frustrated because I can't keep my focus on the video. Now, I mean, that's not always what happens, but that's just one example. It's not necessarily an energy thing so much as it is like, I can't force myself to do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to involve a desire to do it. It's just like sometimes my attention is out of my control, even though I want it to be.
And then when that
control.
happens to me too, sometimes I just think, oh, well, just wait until I'm in the right mood. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Like, I think that for me, I don't know if this could be a J or P difference or maybe not, but like for me, I feel like if I try and focus and I'm just not focusing, I tend to take that as a sign that it's not the right time. And then I'll like move on and do something else. and like I want to like make sure that I am using the energy that I do have. And so whatever I am in the mood to do is what I'm going to try and do, and that can work out well. But if it's something that I'm putting off, like because it seems daunting for whatever reason, a lot of it, at least for me, is related to a lot of like SI sort of tasks maybe, or like doing the dishes, or like I like don't need my internet box anymore, so I need to return it to Google Fiber, and I only have like 5 days left to do that. Like things like that. I just like feel like, oh, I'm not in the mood, so I'll just wait till I am in the mood. And sometimes that could bite me in the ass because it never comes up. But
that's fascinating, because I usually have because I'm very, very aware of like how much energy I actually do have. Like it's very finite. I like to think of myself as having a lot, but even then our bodies can only go so far.
Right.
So let's say usually like right now, as much as I used to think that I'm like, oh, because I used to be a night owl, and I'd be like, I could do this. But then the truth is, no, I wasn't. I would wake up, I would stay up all night, but I wouldn't actually get anything done. But that was because, that was the time technically for sleep, but I was being a brat and just not, being that rebellious 7, I guess. So like nowadays I'm like, well, clearly you already know from the past that when you go to like, when you do try to stay up, you're not going to be focused, and instead you're going to be window shopping.
That's the thing that I don't know.
Like you're going to be window shopping on Amazon, and you're going to make some really bad purchases at midnight, which has happened before. But I have told myself, I'm like, we're not going to do this. But I'm like, oh, it's so good. But
that's the same sort of pattern. That's the same thing that I don't seem to know. Like I literally can lie to myself with that a lot.
Yeah, because like I would wait. So like, yeah, like so what I do is I wake up in the morning. I'd rather do it at 7 a.m. rather than 9 p.m. because I don't feel like productive. Right? But then I also know that as much, even like, let's say I wanted to incorporate working out, which hasn't been happening because I am lazy. But, let's say I did want to go outside more and do something. And I was like, okay, well, I have enough energy to do this. Usually post lunch, I have something, because when I eat, I gain a little bit of something that gives me a time to like, put on some of my shirts and then get out. So I'm like, we'll do that. But then I do those thinking in the morning, and then I'll just, like you said, like follow through with it later on.
I just want to say something too before I forget, is that what you were saying too, of like how you were like, I feel like people tell me all the time things like, Megan, just remember that it's a job, or like, just remember that it's a paycheck, or just remember that this is what you have to do right now before you get here. Or they'll, even when they're trying to help, of like, oh, I see your path. Like, I see that you're, on to big things, whatever, but all you have to do is just get through this now. And even though that is encouraging and people can come from a good place when they say that, to me, it's like, I know I'm on the path. I don't know how to get through this right now. That I've always struggled with that, where it's like, I do remember, like, for example, if I'm having trouble focusing at work, but like my mind is thinking of YouTube ideas, people might perceive it as like, you just need to humble yourself and realize that you have to have this job and you can do your videos later. It's like, no, I know that, like, trust me, I know that I have to do my job. That's why I'm freaking out, because I'm having trouble getting it done. So I don't know if you relate to that, Michelle, or how you.
I'm actually really curious about Nate before I answer.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'll write it down so I don't forget.
Like Nate, when it comes to doing things in the moment, like what happens when you get like a spark for another idea? Like how do you manage that? Because that's right? Like when you're doing things and you're like, oh man, like what if we did this, or what if we did that? Like how do you manage those thoughts while you're trying to do the task at hand?
Usually I would write it down. Those are those moments when something will be written down, but those don't last. Like the Post-it notes, once I look at it again, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'll log it somewhere else. Like, because I do actually have some kind of log, Google Sheets, let's say, and then I throw out the Post-it note. It's a good question, because sometimes I would say that I can turn it off in a way, which is very polar TI of me to say, because the truth is you really can't do that. But in a way, like I've somehow created like a neural pathway, if that makes any sense, in my brain, that when a new idea kicks in, there's like a guy there at the door that says, oh, you have something important? chill on that lounge chair for a bit and come back in 2 minutes. He's going to totally take in everything you say. And the guy's like, cool. And so he'll like sit there for a bit. And hopefully, usually within a short span of time, that works. Usually though, I tend to forget, especially if I don't make those connections right away. Although I have noticed that by blending everything with any, you could actually get back to your old things you were thinking about. Just even like the Wikipedia, getting lost in Wikipedia, for example. Like you could go from butter to Roman Constantinople, like quick. Like it's really not a big change. So for me, if I'm washing dishes, I can actually start thinking about politics. Maybe at some point I'll be like, okay, well, we can make that connection. So I would say it doesn't really hurt or impede my any. If that makes sense, when new ideas kick in, because they just get shelved in the whole matrix that I'm creating anyway. Because to me, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh no.
The one thing I wanted to add
reminds. Oh, sorry.
Win. wait. Go ahead. Because you might forget. That's totally fine.
I was just gonna say that just reminds me of how I think Dave and Shannon talk about. I think objective perceiving or external perceiving as like channel changers, right? Have you heard that phrase? That's what I was just thinking of.
That's how I lucid dream.
If NE or SE can channel change, maybe Michelle has a harder time being in control of the remote, but you're still channel changing just as much. You just like have the remote or something.
Yeah, it's because I like to see NE as putting my thoughts out there, right? Like I was telling this to when I was at the panel thing with Heidi. Heidi was the one who reacted really interesting to it because she's like, I've never heard another NFP say this. But to me, an empty space, like a physical empty space is so important because I fill it with NE. I think by filling it, I actually have a place for it now. Like it's kind of, I like to use another metaphor of having an ocean and having infinite beakers and filling those beakers with water, like the metaphorical ocean of ideas. So what ends up happening with me is that new ideas don't get lost necessarily. They just get shelved and organized as well. But the thing is, those are all external. I don't process internally. I don't have an internal dialogue. I'm not an NI user. Like I don't have any of those wonderful gifts that some folks have. So I leave it out. So pretty much my entire world that I see, and this is why partly I say I don't know what it's like to be in the moment, because every object I see is connected to the matrix that I'm consciously trying to shoot and force it to have. So it's like everything is now part of the mind, let's say. And I guess somebody who isn't NE or who doesn't have high stack NE or who isn't an intuitive will find that kind of messed up. Like, what's wrong with you? Because I've had an ISTP call me out about it. He's like, you're weird. And I'm like, yes, I am. Like it's a thing. Like it is a thing. And there's a lot of people like me. That's how it is. Michelle, do you find, I think this is, I had this point, I actually wrote it in my notes earlier. Do you think that the reason why folks mislabel ADHD with extroverted intuition is one, they aren't well versed in ADHD, but also they don't fully understand what extroverted intuition actually means?
I think that that's exactly what it is. Because extroverted intuition can look like ADD on the outside if you don't understand like how it works. Because NE is constantly making connections between things and constantly trying to create, like it's just wanting new, like novelty at all times, which looks similar to ADHD, which is, you know, when you couple the two, just like imagine that on steroids, no control. Not to say that I can't control it at all. Like I make it sound like it's a lot worse of a thing for me than it is sometimes. I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that?
Well, we were on the point of it being the differentiating of the definitions of people trying to understand, right? Like what NE is and what ADHD really is, to actually get a better, I guess, expression of what. Yeah.
Right, because I think it's hard for somebody sometimes to follow the train of thought of somebody with extroverted intuition.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you get two NE people in the room together, like me and, say, an ENTP. We can go down 20 different conversation paths and not get lost once because we're just following our any noses of like, ooh, what's the most interesting thing to like continue to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to an ENTP literally for 8 hours more than once because we just can keep coming up with things to talk about. We're constantly energized and enjoying these conversations. Now that's separate than ADHD because ADHD is an attention issue. Ironically, this ENTP I'm talking about does also have ADHD, but that does not
seems like you guys were hyper focusing at that moment anyway. You weren't even like getting lost in what you were saying.
No.
You were following.
Yeah. And opening up our tabs on Google so we can research like while we're talking. It was great. But ADHD is an attention issue. And it doesn't mean that you always have attention issues. It means that attention is more difficult for you to maintain, which NE can look like you're not maintaining focus on the idea or the concept, but rather NE is maintaining focus. It's maintaining focus of the line between the ideas and like following them all and like following that rabbit trail. Like imagine you are Alice and you see the bunny and you're following the bunny wherever the bunny takes you. That's NE is the bunny like running around and you're like trying to follow it, right?
Yeah.
ADHD is when you lose sight of the bunny and you're like, oh wow, look at this thing that's right here. Oh, that's pretty neat. Oh, wait, there's a bunny. Let me go back for the bunny. Oh, this thing's here. Oh, that's pretty neat. Like ADHD is like not being able to follow the bunny. So like if you have NE and ADHD, you are like getting distracted by, you know, the flowers there for a little bit or the caterpillar or the tea party. So I think that's actually a pretty good analogy for NE and ADHD is to look at the story of Alice in Wonderland because I think it provides a pretty good visual representation of what that is.
You know, another thing I just thought of too is that I think because NE and SE are both, you know, like ways of focusing on the external world, that maybe it's easier to see like someone's ADHD if they have that higher on their stack, or like maybe people just associate it with that. But like for me, it's interesting because what I get distracted by is not like random. It is my vision. It's like I'll be distracted by like my path, but to the point where I can't like take care of myself, like, and like forget to shower or like forget to go grocery shopping because I'm like focused on, and like, I don't know what, I can't remember the words you used to describe this, Nate, but like when you were like talking about doing the dishes and you're like, oh, maybe I'm thinking of politics, maybe I'm thinking whatever. I'm like, intensely ruminating on everything that I've done and everything that where I'm going. It's not random at all. Like, and
I'm imagining a Greece war zone with their plates. I'm imagining them as like shaped as a little gummy bear getting beheaded by the next little goose shaped oil over there. Like
sometimes it really just feels like either directly talking to God or directly praying or like directly like talking to your soul or something, but it's very linear. Like, I don't know what it is that I am doing, but when I am just, and I mean, I have sleep third. So like whenever I am in like the NITI mode, I do get into it often. It's very much just like, I don't know. It's very much just like ruminating on what is and like sinking deeper into it sort of thing. But that's what I get distracted by. And like, even you can see in my videos, sometimes I'll like look off into the distance if someone's talking, like, or I'll like kind of zone in and out. I've actually had to start writing notes during videos or else I interrupt people too much or I'll forget like my insights that I was going to say. Because it's like someone will say something and then it's like, you take me to like the black hole and I'm like, oh, and then I like realize something.
Damn.
And then I forget what you were saying.
Ooh. Oh, that's so funny because someone could hear that and think that you're talking about NE, but NE is not exactly, it's not like NE would not go down a singular path. Like it, NE is still a single
black
path.
Holes, supernovas.
It's like, okay, this is related to this, which is related to this, which is related to this, which is a straight path, like for the NE, because it's got the SI connection between all of it, and you know exactly how you got to where you got. But NI, it sounds like you're taking one idea and taking that down the full capacity of where that one singular idea could lead or could mean or whatever, which is like, I am struggling to imagine what that's actually like to think like that.
So actually,
I told Joyce it was like a reverse water droplet, because you just like, you go up and you go all the way into the universe. So you're constantly zooming out and you just see everything. Like I thought it was kind of interesting to see how NI, I guess, goes about with it. Because while we like to diverge our thinking and be like, well, it can be many things. And I was like, well, it will always go back to one thing. So that's the main focus is always going back to the one thing. So I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Just don't really know how to orient myself that way consciously, but that's fun.
And actually, when you were talking about Alice in Wonderland, I immediately was thinking, I don't know if this is necessarily NI or not, but I immediately saw myself more in Alice and just falling down the hole. That's what I feel like happens to me. It's like I'm walking and then I fall down the hole.
Oh.
Versus for us, it's like we're looking at the whole everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so.
Because Alice was perpetually confused the entire time.
Yeah, I always thought about Alice as being kind of the NI one, and then the whole world sort of being NE or something.
Because let's be real, like Michelle, you and I jumping into the hole, the minute we see mushrooms talking, we're like, okay, this is my world.
Yes.
We're going to be friends, Mr. Mushroom.
Because I think it's interesting that I like this concept in socionics a lot, which is of the quadras and world accepting versus world rejecting. I think that it's really fascinating, and we're kind of talking about it right now. SI is very quick to accept the way things are and to see where it could go. Whereas SE is like, oh, man, this is what it is. But like, it should be this. Like,
God, that is like so.
Should be this.
It's like the bane of my existence, especially when like my NI sees like what it should be or like could be. Like, especially for me, like with my own life, or like, and it sucks being an NF2 with NI because it's like my feelings are like so attached to like what it could be. But
I find it interesting. I know this is like a tangent, but Tim is also NI, and he does the exact same stuff all the time.
Oh, really?
Like just constantly like pissed off with the way that the world is.
Yes.
And like how it's not living up to like how it should be, where I'm like, well, these are all the ways that it could be, and this is how we could get to that place, and here's what we could do. And he's like, none of that's gonna work.
Because he does not have ADHD.
Oh, no, not at all.
So, sorry, no, I'll just ruminate on that. I had a question, but I forgot.
But I do have a friend who's an INTJ who has ADD. And she has extreme hyperfocus issues, where she will get caught up in something. She'll work on something, whatever. She will not hear you. Whatever you say to her, it takes a lot to get her attention back.
That's me too.
So I think that with NI, I feel like NI people, because like you can snap me out of my hyperfocus pretty easily, just like, you know, smack your hands in front of my face or like be like, Michelle, like pay attention. But with NI people who are ADD and get into the hyper-focus mode, I feel like it's harder to pull them out. From what I've noticed with NI users who have ADD, it's a lot harder to pull them out of the hyper-focus because, I don't know, I think it has to do with NI. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I can get very one-track minded and like just... I don't know. But I really like don't. It really is hard. I'll like forget to eat and stuff if I like I'm having a productive day. I don't know.
I can't forget to eat, but that's because I feel full because I'm energized by like whatever it is that I'm doing.
Oh, so I have a question about. Okay, so I agree that NI and SE can sort of be focused on the world should be this way. But what I struggle with sometimes is feeling unable to cope in the way that the world is, where I don't know if like an NFJ that doesn't have ADHD or something might have an easier time, or like, I don't know, have an easier time knowing what to do or putting your focus on the things that need to get done now.
I don't know. I feel like anyone can get depressed. Like that just sounds like a depression thing. Like, when it's like hard to accept like, I mean, I just had a depressive episode last night. Like, I was editing my video that I posted today and I hated everything about it. I'm just like, people are going to hate the whole video. They're going to give me all these like logical, they're going to call out all my logical fallacies. Like, I'm not going to be able to handle it. Like, I'm never going to be able to like figure out how to make the world a better place. It's like a complete waste of time to even try any of what I'm doing. And like, I mean, like we all can get in those kind of mentalities. Maybe like they represent or like manifest differently, but it sounds like what you were talking about is very similar to what I'm talking about. It's just, we're looking at it in different ways because we're just experiencing the world differently.
Yeah.
But that just sounds to me like general, like a depressive thought, which doesn't have to be that you have depression. But I mean, I feel like we all can just have depressive thoughts.
True. I feel like for me, it's more like, I don't know, like the executive functioning of like, at least I know it's different for NFPs, but for me, it's very much like my SI really sucks. And I don't literally know like what to do to like stay alive. I'm so preoccupied by visions that will help me stay alive. And part of this is being like self-preservation last too. But, even when I talk about it, I feel like I'm being dramatic, but like, it really does feel that way of like, it's not just that I'm impatient and I think that the world needs to change now. It's that like, I feel like I don't know what to do in order to get by in like a lot of things.
Well, a lot of NFJs describe themselves as being detached from their body, right? Like that there is a consciousness of theirs that is operating outside that happens to be really them, but there's just this bag of meat that's walking around that's posing as who they are. And it sounds strange to those who doesn't have NI, but it actually kind of makes a lot of sense. Like when I heard it the first time, I remembered I made a parallel that SE, high stack SE, probably view their bodies like a tool, like a weapon even. Whereas an NI-DOM or NI-OX would view their body like as if it was not part of them. It was just something completely different. And they just have to work with it somehow and deal with the unfortunate reality of being tethered to a meat bag.
Yeah.
Whereas for, I guess, NE-DOMs, like for us, I guess we typically, it's like we operate our bodies, but it's almost like we ignore the whispers of our SI. Sometimes we can go about being like, you're hungry. And we're like, no, we're not. Whereas like SI DOMs or SI OX could operate on the fact of that this is their home, right? The whole body is a temple, Chinese philosophy, all that kind of gig, right? Like, so it's so interesting to see how people orient their bodies. And, I can almost expect folks judging each other, being like, why are you like that? But that's just the entirely different way of looking at the world.
As an NJ, it's like, why won't my tool work?
Yeah.
That's what you were saying about SE, but...
Right? Like, it's like a different perception. Like our SI, SE, NE, NI. It has nothing to do with our judging, I don't think, but it's just fascinating.
I feel like I'm acutely aware of like these changes inside my body, but I choose to neglect them for whatever it is that I'm doing right now. Like I will know that I need to pee. I will know that I need to use the bathroom. But I will continue to stay in the conversation for like an hour, despite the fact that I really need to pee, and I'll just like pace and like shake my leg and like do whatever I have to in order to like keep in the conversation, because I'd rather be in the conversation than, take a 2-minute break to go to the bathroom.
Oh my God, yeah.
I don't think I don't notice it. I think that I just choose.
It's a choice, right? It is a choice.
Dude, almost every single time I sit down to meditate, I instantly realize that I need to pee. Like, I don't think I've ever like sat down to meditate and like not realize I need to pee.
Honestly, that is so NFJ. Other NFJs see this and they're like, that's not me. No, sis, that's 100% how it is. NJs, absolutely.
I do think that there's other ways to meditate than to just sit still and do nothing with your body, though. That can be a good way to meditate. Like Nate was saying, he really likes doing the dishes. I actually do really like doing the dishes as well. And for me, that's like a time of meditation for me. So like I will turn off everything and I won't listen to music or anything. And I will just focus on doing the dishes and being aware of what I'm doing. And like, I'll just like try to clear my thoughts while I wash the dishes and like be aware of like the suds, like as I'm scrubbing it. I mean, not always, because sometimes I'll just like throw on an audiobook.
Shower, fantastic. Like just get the water going down, amazing.
There's definitely like other weight. I think that meditation is really important, especially if you have ADD. But to like find a means of meditation that works for you, because just trying to force yourself to do nothing, it's not going to work.
Oh,
ADD,
sis, absolutely.
I
have sleep paralysis attacks. It's not happening. We are not. The minute I'm not doing anything.
It's better for me when I meditate to like just allow myself. Like I took a meditation class in college, and I remember when I was first learning about it, I asked like the teacher or something like, is it normal that whenever I do tune into myself, my brain is like firing off ideas and I can't like turn them off? But I've learned to just sort of embrace that. And like the goal, at least for me, what works is to just not attach to them and let them float by, and allow the insights to sink in if they want to. But I just sort of see it as like a little like spiritual tune up or like body check-in thing. But yeah, I really
like what Michelle said about different styles of meditation, because there are definitely different schools that preach the different perception focus. Like if the meditation class teacher is very into SI philosophies, and you see that the poor NFJ walking in going like, what the heck am I doing here?
Pay attention to the tingles in your toe. Now relax your
like,
toe.
Nope, hard pass.
My mom took me to a 3-hour meditation workshop one time, and it was all just like pay attention to your body and just like sit there and my God, I was just like, I'm in pain. How do you sit still for so long? I can't do this. Why does this torture exist?
See, if I was told like, okay, try and tune into your higher self or try and discover your past life, sit for 3 hours, it would be so much easier than trying to tune into my toes.
It drove me nuts. It was a difficult 3 hours.
Oh, wow. So I have a question, Michelle, is like, so I wonder, since you're more well-versed in ADHD, if you could speak to this a little. But like, I kind of related to you when you were talking about like when you posted your last video and you're like, oh no, like people are going to comment things and stuff. Because like in my mind, I'm just like, oh no, people are going to say I'm not an ENFJ because I'm relating to all these like P-like things. And like, so I didn't know if you can like kind of, I guess, explain more like the difference between NE and ADHD, like in your experience, or like just what your thoughts are on that. Like, how do you think that it interacts with type?
Oh, well, I mean, that's something that I'm actually interested in exploring further because, like someone was even saying like, it's more likely that people mistype themselves than misdiagnose with ADHD, though I don't fully agree with that. I think that it's probably both, and it's likely that they're kind of like both happening at the same time. It's very possible because like listening to what you're saying, like I could see how people are like, oh, she's an ENFP and just doesn't even know that she's an ENFP because like listen to all these, like anything she's doing, because people don't necessarily understand what NE is or what ADHD is. ADHD is literally only the focus. It's only relevant to focus and how much you can put and where you can put it and how easily you can manage your focus, and what kind of techniques you have to use in order to manage your focus.
I love that.
And NE is not anything to do with focus, and it has more to do with what your mind is paying attention to, what it's looking for. And I think that all of the perception functions are what your mind is looking for. So like introverted sensing, they're looking for, their own awareness of their body. They're looking for the facts and like organizing the facts, organizing their experiences, all of that. SE is looking at the real world and looking at reality and trying to make sense of reality. And then introverted intuition is trying to find what everything means. Like, what is the ultimate like line that like connects everything perfectly, and like what can like pierce through everything and catch everything along the way. And NE is like, what all could we connect into this? Like, what all could we put into this? Like, how could we, like, where could we tie these strings together and still like have everything like put together?
I think especially people who are not NE users, or they don't have any of them close, they don't have close NE user friends. I feel like they might feel like the NE user isn't paying attention to them or something, because, and they might mistake that as
especially high NE, because high NE is very detached.
Oh,
I think
I'm at the point where I'll just tell you. I'll be like, yo, I want to ignore you. Like, I'll just straight up just say it. Leave them with no guessing.
I feel like it can seem like NE users, like NPs, aren't all the way there because you aren't interacting with the physical reality in the same way that SE does. And you aren't.
We're not very in the present moment. Like, I was relating so much to what Nate was saying about like, we're not in the present moment. Like, I feel like I'm retroactively in the present moment. Like, I retroactively process the present moment. Like,
absolutely.
Like, I process what you guys said 30 minutes ago, like now, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, now I'm seeing like,
oh, wow.
It's a very interesting way to live life with extroverted intuition, which is supposedly like people say that NPs are in the moment because they're reactive to things that are happening in the moment. But I don't think we perceive ourselves really as being in the moment. I have never thought I was somebody who lives in the moment. Never once
absolutely.
have I thought that. People might think I am.
Remember how like Jung described it as like looking at the object, but then looking at the intuition outside of the object.
Right.
So I kind of like worked with that by thinking that it's looking at the object and moving away from it. So it's like I see the mic in front of me, but I'm also seeing now what I want to do with this mic, what could be doing with this mic. So I'm not even, at this point, I'm not even staring at this guy anymore. We're here now. We've moved past the object. We're not bothering with it anymore. And I think, it could be mistaken as, oh, do you have ADHD? Could you possibly, because you're like, no, because we're talking about the movement.
You chose to not focus on the sensory detail of that mic.
Yeah, like in a sense, I can't turn off being an NE dom. I'm not going to be able to turn off being able to see all these different things with every object I put in my eye on. But what you mentioned, Michelle, what I really enjoyed about the whole, it's a conversation about focus for ADHD. And I like that because when situations do come in and they're like, hey, snap a finger and like, can you look over here? That to me is not a problem because I will always see objects. I'm always going to see objects. That's not going to stop. So it's going to be there when it's there, and it's going to be there when I'm not there. So that's kind of how I see my reality. It is independent of me in a way. So I'm fine, I guess, disregarding certain things, like certain NE-isms that I have, because I know it will always be there.
So
I don't know if...
Oh, sorry. I just was wondering, Michelle, do you feel like you are way more likely to hyper-focus on NF things and struggle to focus on like ST things?
Oh, yes. Oh, I hate, so like at my work, there's something that I'm like letting myself get behind on because I'm like, I'll just do it first thing when I come in tomorrow. And then I don't. And that is like the data entry, boring, just copy paste stuff that I know I need to get done. And I know if I just like put pedal to the metal for half an hour, I would get it done. But instead of doing it, I let it pile up. And now it's an hour's worth of work. And now it's an hour and a half's worth of work.
That's what I've been doing with my data, like literally my data report for marketing. I put it off for a week. I got it done, but like it ended up taking like 5 hours, and it was like late at night, and I ordered pizza for myself to sort of make myself happier and in a better mood. And I didn't start it until like 8 p.m. And then I ended up not finishing it until midnight or something. And it was like, because I knew that it was like the last possible day that I could have gotten away with saying I'll do it in the morning. So like, that's another thing that I don't know if this is partially a J thing too, but like, I wasn't late. Like nobody noticed anything.
I mean, to me, it sounds like you procrastinated. So that the time crunch would force you to focus more.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
I do that a lot too. I'm a procrastinator. People think that any DOMs are procrastinators, but I would say that we're not all any users are procrastinators. Yeah. I think
I don't say not by definition. It's a choice, but it's not by definition.
My INFJ, my INFJ partner procrastinates just as much as me. And I don't know, like, if just different types procrastinate for different reasons.
Maybe it's no, because I think SE users procrastinate. I was like, maybe sensors don't procrastinate. No, I think everyone maybe procrastinates for different reasons. But I think that ADHD people have a higher propensity for procrastination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're like, I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to put my focus there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I think like for people with ADHD, like a lot of what we've been talking about is like NF stuff of like how easy it is for us to like want to like make YouTube videos or like think about different theories and stuff. But it reminded me there's a INTP on Twitter. Shout out to C Note or Dopamine Podcasts, I think it's called, but who was talking about ADHD. And I was just thinking about how I think he mentioned something about as an INTP with ADHD, it's like he will be so invested in something he's learning that he'll forget like the social niceties of like the FE stuff. Where like for me, I will like literally forget to do certain things that need to get done because of FE stuff. And it's like, I really just think that we probably, if you have ADHD, are more likely to just, I mean, like hyper focus on the functions that you have, you know, like it could probably just happen with any function. But like for an INTP, it's like, oh crap, forgot to text someone back, or like something more FE would probably slip their mind more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that it's highly, highly probable. And I think this would be something interesting to explore. What would be really cool is if we could get a bunch of ADHD, if we can put together a survey with some really interesting questions, ask them their type, and then see what kind of correlations are with certain aspects.
Oh my God.
And whether, because it can be kind of a personality test, kind of an ADHD test put together. So maybe we can do that, and we can put that in the description of the video.
God, yeah. I'd help you do it. Yeah. So we can say it's linked below.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Below. We're going to see what kind of correlations there are, and we're going to put it all over all our social medias, and we're going to see.
Yes.
And then we
down for it.
We're going to do it. This is exciting.
Oh my God, yeah. And then Michelle, you should like do a video like analyzing the data.
Yes, that would be amazing. Oh my gosh.
By the way, I kind of want to add another angle to quickly, shortly, briefly, if I could, because this is something that you definitely mentioned like way back in the conversation, because I basically have all the recipe of being known as a stereotypical ADHD. Like I'm also a 7, and like even Enneagram, people might start assuming just because, you know, because 7s are typically known as energetic. One description called it having monkey minds, juggling through different things at once and doing all that kind of things. But that's if you look at the surface of Enneagram. Like you see the surface of a human being, you just see that we're this kind of person. But then Enneagram isn't necessarily meant to make you feel better. It's meant to completely rip you apart and leave you feeling completely destroyed. 7s are cursed with idealization and rationalization as our coping mechanisms. So a big part that if you're going to identify somebody as, are they a 7 or are they an ADHD or are they both? Ask yourself, how many times do they reframe a situation? How quickly are they to want to avoid pain? How quickly are they do they know what they want? A vice for 7s, and I will admit this, is gluttony. I love eating. And it doesn't have to be literal food. It could be anything. And that consumption, and I was just reading an article, it hit me to the core. It says 7s do not feel that they can find what they really want in life. And I'm like, oh, wow. Way to hit me. Way to like just kill me right then and there.
Oh, no.
And because we don't know we feel that we can't actually have it. Not that we don't know what we want. We know what we want. We just can't have it. We'll try everything instead. And there's the point where we reframe. Well, if I can't have it, I'll have whatever is on the plate then. So it's that kind of mentality. We'll just keep doing that. And, it's why the growth point to 5 is so important, because it allows us to be like, hey, you can get what you want. You have to be willing to like put in the work. You have to be willing to not let yourself be distracted, face the pain. And which again, none of those are related to ADHD. Those are growth points in a human psyche that is totally unrelated to an actual psychological thing that people are going through. Another thing I wanted to add to that, which I think you guys probably agree with, when people make these strange correlations between certain extroverted types known in certain personality systems and ADHD, I feel like they're not getting the full picture of what's going on, because there's a lot of things that, like ADHD is a serious thing, I feel. This is a serious thing that people go through and people experience, and it's recognized by psychologists. Like, whereas MBTI isn't necessarily a hard science yet. So to make those balancing connections is kind of irresponsible. I mean, I'm talking like as if we're the NF that we are, right?
No, I think that for a lot of things, people want to connect MBTI to certain traits and certain characteristics. And that is just not how MBTI works. MBTI does not directly correlate with personality traits, which is why I kind of think that personality is a misnomer with MBTI. And I think that if we reframe it as more of a cognitive personality as opposed to a expressed personality, in some ways, I think socionics does try to like assign traits to cognitive functions. And I think objective personality does a little bit, though I think objective personality does try to actually look at the cognition and the trends of the cognition. But I don't know. That's one of my biggest, and I think what I'm trying to get at is that people are trying to correlate cognitive functions with certain traits. So like even with that whole, like, I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, there was a video where this guy met with a girl who doesn't have verbal thoughts. She has just these like visual connections and stuff inside her mind. Immediately I got hit up on a bunch of different social media platforms. People are like, how do you think? What is your stuff like? And immediately they're trying to say, oh, this is one personality type that does this. And very quickly we found that is not the case. There is no correlation between whether or not you have verbal thoughts in your head and whether or not you're a certain personality type. There is no correlation. There might be there might be a higher trends, just like, more NFPs are journalists than other types.
So happen to
it's
be,
just this is just what it is. Like, this is just more common. It's it's comorbid, not causation. It's just like they exist at the same time. They're not caused by one another.
Yeah, so actually the thing that you mentioned about traits is very, very important, because I believe like Dario Nardi and Linda Behrens, and I think Lenore Thompson too, like definitely several authors will point out like the difference between like the big 5 versus the 16 cognitive type model, where it's like we're trying to see this holistic theme between how your psyche operates. Where if you're looking at a trait, it's like this defined set of characteristics that it's like, I feel like I probably share a lot of similar traits to, well, either both of you guys or just a lot of ENFPs in general, but our cognition is so different, but like we can agree on a lot of traits. Like I feel like, Michelle, even like when we talk, there's often times where I'm like, oh my God, I so relate to that or something. But like that doesn't mean that we're processing things in the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah, internally our brains are wired completely differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't it one of the biggest frustrations is that 16 personalities was kind of based off of Big 5?
It is Big 5.
It is based.
It literally is Big 5.
So there we go.
CPT, I don't know if you've ever watched Harry from CPT, but he did a video explaining exactly why the 16personalities.com is Big 5 and exactly which of the ENI and whatever and how they correlate with the Big 5, because that turbulent assertive, that is the what is it?
Right.
neurotic trait, I think. And conscientiousness is the JP, and thinking, feeling, knowns. Wait, I don't remember all the big five.
Agreeableness.
Agreeableness is the thinking,
insane,
feeling.
Yeah,
I score always really high extra on that one.
Big five can also change a lot, which is why people, when they take the 16 personalities test, they get a bunch of different answers. Yes. And it's like, no wonder you're going to get a bunch of...
Yeah, it's because your traits literally do change. Because traits are something that you can develop. Like,
you can work on them.
Yeah. Like you can become
while they might be easier
conscientious.
to map because they are observable. Like you guys said, it's learnable or develop. You can develop them. So
and even Jordan Peterson said that big five is not what somebody is set at. However, when you look at groups of people who have the same big five, there are trends and there are interests that tend to match, and you can market based off big five traits that you're trying to market to. Like if you use big five, you can market to targeted people that are in that demographic. That demographic, who's in the demographic can change, but you're still marketing to that demographic, whether or not the people within that demographic are staying consistent. Anyway, I don't know where I was going
love
with
that, actually. I love that what we take away from this is that traits and personality like MBTI and cognitive functions are not actually connected. Exactly. That's actually really good. I love that. I mean, if anyone's going to take something away from this, I really appreciate that part, because that really does help. Because I think we're eager to try. I mean, there's a lot of folks who are eager to try to push for cognitive functions to be recognized. Like especially, I mean, I feel like a lot of us do try, but in a way, trying to do so in the lens of blending these types of by blending traits with cognitive functions I don't think is the way to go.
I feel like it's like people are trying to hop on something that is psychological so that maybe this will be more accepted, of like, oh yeah, ADHD, that's just being intuitive, or like that's just NE or something.
I mean, you could be ADHD and an intuitive. That's fantastic. I mean, Michelle, it's a fantastic combo.
Yeah, that's what even earlier, whenever I was like saying like, I feel like I like to look at it as like, I believe that what I might have ADHD. I believe that it manifests in me as this bad SI right here. But that doesn't mean that I'm saying that like this ADHD thing is SI. I'm just saying like, I think for me that is
right. I think that's an incredibly important distinction, is that ADHD can manifest differently for different people, just as personality can manifest for different people. Like, I think it's pretty interesting, the video that OP put out today, actually 2 days ago when you guys are watching this, which was about Aubrey Plaza. And they actually typed her as an INFP, which on the internet, she's pretty widely known as an INTJ. So I thought that was a really interesting video, because like that makes you think a lot about how their system works compared to other systems. And their system I found to be like one of the most consistent. I don't necessarily agree with absolutely everything that they say. And I think they too try to draw certain conclusions. I think it's a natural thing for the mind to want to draw conclusions and fit more and more things into a conclusion, because it's neater and it's nicer and it's easier. Because we want to have like clear yes and no, but things are much more complicated than that.
Yeah,
what's so that's the delicious part about it.
Yeah,
using food metaphors. Oh God,
it's so funny. Yeah, I know, you're just hungry. Well, I was just gonna say, for me, I feel like I literally do agree with almost every single thing that Dave and Shannon says, but then like I'll just see the person differently or something, which I hate when that happens. Which like I feel like that's why I hate sometimes typing celebrities or like other people, because I'm like, oh man, like your logic makes perfect sense. I just am like literally seeing like a different type of person, but I don't know them, so, and I'm not them, so I give up, sort of thing. Yeah. But anyway, that was kind of a tangent. But
well, I think this is a really great place. I think the conversation has resolved itself, what we were trying to get across, which is just that NE is not ADHD, and other personality types can have ADHD. And as soon as you can make that distinction, I think psychology is so fascinating. And I think MBTI is one aspect of psychology, and it doesn't relate to every aspect of psychology. But I think it's interesting to know more about psychology because it can help you with typing, because perhaps you do have somebody who has really strong ADHD, and they come off more as an NE or SE Dom. Once you can clear away your perception of their ADHD, you can more clearly see what cognitive processes are happening rather than these surface traits that you see and can recognize.
Absolutely.
Because ADHD you could observe, really.
Yes,
you really
can.
could. I mean, that's why it's being diagnosed and why you got a lot of doctors giving it, right? But typing
same with
requires
autism.
time.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do a video on autism because that's another one that people want to say, "Oh, I'm an INTJ, therefore I have autism."
Oh, Lord.
I think I might know someone you could talk to. I might know someone who you could talk to who is like unsure if they were an INFJ with autism or an INTP or something, because I feel like a lot of people think that, oh, like I can't be a feeler or something because I have autism or like something like that. But another like point I just thought of too is just like, if you think NE is spacey, NE is a lot of ideas, like the more you attach your definition of NE to like these traits, like the harder it is to pull apart. Like if you have ADHD or it's NE or something. So yeah.
I think I need to revamp my MBTI booby trap video.
Oh yeah, there's always more booby traps.
I'll do a part 2.
Whenever you keep following that rabbit running around.
Yes. But I want to thank you guys so much for chatting with me on my channel and having this conversation. It was something that I've been wanting to talk about on my channel, so it gave me a good reason to like actually work and finish and make the videos happen, because you know how it can be. You have a bajillion ideas.
Well, I loved how productive this was, because we really got through a lot of subjects. I really hope that people like this really smashed some stereotypes going on, because I think for me, like I've been dealing with people constantly being like, oh, maybe you have it, maybe you know. I'm like, please look it up. Please do your research before you start pointing fingers at people. Like, I get it. I'm whimsical and blah, but you don't know me when the doors close and like, you know, the makeup comes off.
Right. And I'm so the opposite. People like think I'm so put together and they don't know like how much I struggle. So.
Exactly. But you guys should definitely, if you're not already, go subscribe to Meghan and go subscribe to I Cannot Even With Myself. I just can't even with myself right now. And thank you guys so much for watching. Can't ever.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys have a beautiful, amazing, fantastic day.
Bye.